This week's episode of the Unpopular Podcast is sponsored by The Lost and Forgotten, The Journey to Understanding and Loving Me, a book written by my mother, Stephanie Bryan. It is a book about her life. There's a lot of intimate details about her life, my life. Go purchase the book right now at Amazon.com. The link will be in the description below. Again, The Lost and Forgotten, The Journey to Understanding and Loving Me, written by Stephanie Bryan, my mother. Let's start the show. Welcome. I want to welcome you to yet another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. It's your boy, Jalen. And before we start, if you would do me a favor, please come and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to wherever you're listening. It would definitely mean a lot to me. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and I would feel some type of way if I didn't, at least didn't say something about the historic day. Martin Luther King, he's probably the most quoted person ever outside of the Bible. And, his fight for equality, for injustice, of course, along with other people, is the reason why we're here today, is the reason why you see, African-American athletes playing alongside Caucasian athletes, is the reason why I have a platform to speak freely about what I love, which is sports. So, again, I want to shout out to Martin Luther King and his family for Martin Luther King Day, and his impact on the world is still being felt today. I don't think that we are completely where he envisioned us being. However, I do think with a lot of, Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of the protests that we've seen this year, I do think that we're headed in the right direction. And I believe we are making Martin Luther King proud. So again, shouts out to Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King Day. That was yesterday. And let's talk about some sports. So this weekend, we had the divisional rounds. We had the AFC, the Bills against the Ravens. We had the Chiefs against the Browns. We had the Packers against the Rams. But where we're going to start is the Bucks against the Saints. The Bucks beat the Saints 30-20. And this game was, I'll say this was the game of the week, in my opinion. This game had so much writing on it. Of course, you had legacy games. You had the legacy between Tom Brady and Drew Brees. You had, to me, one of the most complete team roster on paper, which is the Saints, going against one of the top defenses in the playoffs, which is the Bucks. This game had so much to it. And what we saw was let me say this. I didn't expect what we saw, but I'm kind of upset at myself for not expecting it. And here's what we saw. We saw two older quarterbacks, of course, 42 and 43. We saw them going in two different directions. And this is what I mean. I'm not saying Tom Brady's getting younger. Don't hear me say that at all, because that's not what's happening. But Drew Brees looked like a 42-year-old quarterback. He threw 3 interceptions. He had the team had a total four turnovers, and those turnovers were the deciding factors of the game. Each turnover, had or gave the Bucks great positioning or great field positioning to score, and they scored on every turnover. And here's what I'll say. Congratulations to the Bucks and Tom Brady for making it to the NFC Championship. I think the first time winning or making it since 2002. So shouts out to them. But this game really is about Drew Brees. Now, a report from Jake Laser came out before the game saying this game would more than likely be his last game. And Of course, we saw after, he gave a kiss to the crowd, and he told reporters it's going to take a couple days to think about the season and see if he wants to retire or not. Here's what I think is going to happen. And this kind of is in the same realm of what we're talking about with Big Ben. Now, do I think Big Ben and Drew Brees in the same class? No, I don't. But what I say is this. As a quarterback or as a player, the last thing you want to do is be a hindrance to your team. The last thing you want to do is be out there and know that you're not able to put your team in position to win. Now, is Drew Brees still talented? Yes. Is Drew Brees still accurate? Yes. A lot of those interceptions were because he couldn't. And here's the detriment about Drew Brees. Drew Brees cannot get the ball downfield. Drew Brees, this entire season, has not thrown the ball downfield. He just doesn't have the arm strength for it anymore. And teams know that. That's why you had, the Bucks played everything close. Like they didn't even fear Drew Brees throwing the ball downfield, and he didn't because he just doesn't have the arm strength. I believe this game was won by the Bucks because of the turnovers the 3 turnovers Drew Brees had and the 1 fumble that Jared Cook had. I think Drew Brees' inability to throw downfield was the main reason that they lost the game. Now, I understand you can look and say, well, they beat them twice in the regular season and they only lost by 10, but you got to think about it. Each of those turnovers resulted in some type of points, whether it was touchdown or field goal. Like they resorted in some type of points, and Drew Brees, and I'm gonna just say it, Drew Brees was the reason they lost this game. The defense played exceptionally. It's just when they're on the field so many times, it's kind of tough. Not to mention their starting field position is usually close to the red zone. It's tough for any defense to overcome that. So we asked, does Drew Brees or should Drew Brees retire? And here's what I say. And this is the same thing I'll say about Big Ben. I think this is the time. I think now they can make the decision what they want, but I think that Drew Brees has nothing to prove. Yes, I understand that he's only won 1 Super Bowl and he has a really good team. And the team went all in now. Like you can see their cap situation, especially next year, is going to be outrageous because they went all in this year. So I think that I think we've seen the last of Drew Brees. Now, what is Drew Brees' legacy then? Drew Brees' legacy is a player that when he came into the league, he wasn't good. I remember I wasn't really old enough to remember stuff like this, but I know that he was benched for Doug Flutie. I understand that it didn't work out in San Diego. Due to an injury, the Dolphins didn't want him. That's what Nick Saban was coaching, but the Dolphins couldn't get him. So he went to a losing franchise, which was the Saints, and he turned them around. Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. He I think second right now in touchdown passes ever. I know he's first in passing yards, and he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks we've ever seen. Yeah, another thing, and I know he said some things about the Black Lives Matter movement or Colin Kaepernick kneeling. I get that, but that's the only blemish that Drew Brees has in his illustrious career. Like I said, and if it wasn't for a couple of heartbreaks and a couple of literal miracles, Drew Brees would have multiple Super Bowl appearances at least. I'm not going to say he would have won, but at least multiple Super Bowl appearances. So, shouts out to Drew Brees, man, and shouts out for the career. I say that because I believe that we've seen the last of Drew Brees. And if he does come back, hey, much power to him. But I don't think if Drew Brees is your starting quarterback, I don't think that you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. I think you have a chance to win multiple games. Drew Brees is still a very smart quarterback, but his body is holding, especially his shoulder strength, is holding him back from being an elite quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback at this point. I understand that they made it to the divisional round, but that's mostly because of the team that you have around him. He still has a top defense. He still has one of the best running backs in the league. He still has a really good receiving core. It's just Drew Brees. Drew Brees is the main reason why they didn't succeed, and I think he knows that. And I think that's why he said, "I'm gonna take a couple days," and that's why before the game, I guess he told Jay Glazer, "Yeah, that's probably it." So, it makes sense, man. And we'll talk about the divisional champions or the divisional championships a little later, but shouts out again to the Bucs for winning. Their defense played exactly how they were supposed to play. Now, I was one of the people thinking I should have known. It's incredibly difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row, especially in one season. So I should have known that it wasn't going to be as easy as projected, but the Bucs defense was incredible. And Tom Brady, here's the thing. Tom Brady didn't have astronomical numbers, but what Tom Brady did was he did the dink and dunk to perfection. I think Mike Evans only had one reception, which was a touchdown. Gronk had a couple. Leonard Fournette had 5. Like he knew he wasn't gonna. Because Don Brady knows also, he doesn't have, he still has arm strength, don't get me wrong. So don't hear me say he doesn't have arm strength. But Tom Brady isn't slinging the thing like Josh Allen. He knows, especially to beat a team with the defense that the Saints have, it's got to be methodical. It's got to be methodical and it's got to be quick. Yeah, he was sacked a couple times, but he was slicing them up. And again, I understand that the interceptions and the turnovers definitely helped the Bucs, but Tom Brady played an incredible game, and I know it when you look at the stats. And if you looked at the game, he didn't make miraculous plays, but it was the turnovers, and I think the momentum swinging turnover was the Jared Cook turnover. I think they were up 10-3, and the Saints were up 10-3, and they were driving down the field, and of course Jared Cook got stripped, or got the ball, knocked out his hand and stuff. But shouts out to the Bucs for beating the Saints 30-20, and I think, like I said, we've seen the last of Drew Brees, and even if this is the last of Drew Brees, he still had one of the greatest careers we've ever seen, especially when you see how it started to when it ended. So shouts out to Drew Brees. Moving forward, let's talk about the Chiefs and the Browns. The Chiefs beat the Browns 22-17. The story of this game, of course, was Patrick Mahomes having to leave the game due to a concussion in the third quarter. And it was Chad Henne that came in at first. When as a team, and you see their best player, and this isn't just football. This is anything. When you see the best player on the floor or on the field or whatever, when you see them go out, there's a level of confidence that you start to get. Now, no, you don't hope for the worst. Of course, you hope everyone's okay. You don't hope for no injuries, nothing like that. But there's a level of confidence that you get when you see the best player on their other team go out, and you saw that with the Browns. They scored a touchdown after Patrick Mahomes went out, and it was a concussion. Of course, Patrick Mahomes started running, and then he got tackled, and I think he got hit in the back of his head. He looked wobbly. I knew at that point, yeah, he's not coming back for the rest of the game. Of course, it's still up in the air to see if he's going to play next week, but I'm almost sure, especially seeing how important this game is and who they're playing, that they're definitely he's going to try everything in his power to play. But yeah, man, and the Chiefs look incredible, man. And here's the thing, even with Patrick Mahomes, when he did play, he still had like an injury to his toe or his foot, and he was still carving them up. He was still, it's like, I think his first 5 possessions were some type of score, whether it was a touchdown or a field goal. Like, and that's, and they were starting deep in their territory. So Mahomes was just playing incredible, and the Chiefs looked like the Chiefs. I was one of the people that thought, and don't get me wrong, this was a good game. But I was one of the people that thought it's either going to go one or two ways. This is going to be a really close game because the Chiefs have struggled going into this game. I'm not saying struggle as they lost because they haven't been losing, but they've struggled, especially in the red zone. They've struggled, connecting with players. Patrick Mahomes has been throwing interceptions, not at like an alarming rate, but he's been throwing more interceptions than usual. And I didn't know what we were going to get. So I said, this game's either going to be really close or this game is going to go hella bad quick, because we know how Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs look once you turn that on. And that's what it was looking like through the first few minutes. I was like, oh, Lord, this is going to be a close game. But the Browns didn't play bad. It's just when you're going up against that firepower, and while the Browns have good firepower on the offense, and their defensive line is really good, but you can tell they definitely, and I said this going in, the Browns' secondary is not good. And we saw, Travis Kelce was wide open. Harmon was wide open. Tyreek Hill was wide open. Like, and Patrick Mahomes was carving them up. So, but one thing I want to say, and I'm gonna, and I think it's funny. Before the season, before the playoffs run, all we heard, and we'll talk about the Bills and the Ravens in a second, but all we heard was Lamar Jackson cannot win Lamar Jackson cannot win if he is trailing by 10 or more points. I think the stat was they're 0-10 or like 0-5 if they're trailing by 10 or more points. Did you know that Baker Mayfield is 0-20 when trailing by 8 or more points since he has been named a starter? 0-20 when trailing by 8 or more points. We made a big fuss about Lamar Jackson not being able to win, being down, 10 points. I think it was like 0-10 or 0-11 or something like that before they came back and beat the Tennessee Titans. Baker Mayfield, the Browns didn't play bad, but Baker Mayfield didn't play great. Baker Mayfield played really good in spurts, and he had moments, but he didn't play good enough to win, even if Patrick Mahomes wasn't the quarterback. So, but I just thought it's funny how, and this is what I remember saying this last episode, that Lamar Jackson is arguably the most scrutinized quarterback that's in the league right now, because all we heard was he can't come back when he's down. Baker Mayfield is 0-20 when trailing by 8 or more points since being a starter in the league. Now, I'm not saying Baker Mayfield's bad. I'm not saying he isn't. He's not a good quarterback. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, let's call a spade a spade. It's difficult in the league when you're trailing, and I understand that some people are good and some people are better. But let's look at the totality of what we're getting from these quarterbacks and not just focus on how bad Lamar Jackson's been or something like that. But again, shouts out to the Chiefs beating the Browns. 22-17. I think Mahomes will be back. He did run to the locker room after everything happened, and I think he'll be back for the AFC Championship game. And yeah, I think the Browns have, they're in a good spot. The Browns aren't too far off, in my opinion. I think if they really focus on the secondary this offseason and maybe get because they spent a lot of money last season or last offseason on the offense. You got OBJ. Well, he's been had him, but you had OBJ, you had Austin Hooper, you have Njoku, you have Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Like, you have a lot of pieces, and of course they got the offensive line right, because they have one of the best offensive lines in the league now. You get that right. I think now it's time that you have to focus on the defense, especially the secondary, and I think they have a really bright future if they. I mean, I know all those people aren't gonna, like, I know OBJ is probably gone. I know that. So, and I know that there's pieces that's gonna have to leave, but I think that they have a good core, and I think that they have a very promising future ahead if they continue to grow. You know what I mean? So again, shouts out to the Chiefs for beating the Browns 22-17. The next game I'm going to talk about is the Bills and the Ravens. The Bills beat the Ravens 17-3. Now, Josh Allen was good. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs was the best player on the field, especially in the second half, and it really wasn't close. The way that he was getting open against great defenders like Marcus Peters, like Marlon Humphreys, Jimmy Smith, like he was carving them up. And of course, it's when you have a wide receiver that good. I'm not saying that he's the reason why Josh Allen has been good, but it makes the job that much easier when your wide receiver is that talented and you guys are on the same page. But of course, the story of the game is Lamar Jackson. He leaves in the third quarter leaves by the quarter and a half left with a concussion. And here's the thing about Lamar. We know what Lamar is. Lamar is a freak athlete. His speed is incredible. We know, he's not the greatest passer, but he can still pass the ball. He can still, he's a talented talent. He's an athlete. He's a very talented athlete. And I hear a lot of people today, because here's the thing. The Ravens defense played incredible. They only held the Bills to 10 points. The Bills has been averaging cracking people's heads with 30 points a game. They only had 10 points. It wasn't for a Lamar Jackson or a pick six that really got them to 17. And here's the thing about Lamar Jackson. All today or yesterday, you hear, Lamar Jackson has to be a better passer. Lamar Jackson has to be a better passer. Lamar Jackson has to be a better passer. I will say this. Lamar Jackson does have to be I don't think he has to be a better passer, because we've seen, especially in his MVP year, Lamar Jackson can pass the ball. I think Lamar Jackson has to be a better situational passer. And when I say that is, you have to be able to pass in situations that you're needed to pass. And there's some times that he's able to do it. There's some times that, as we've seen, he isn't as accurate as he should be. So I think that if he becomes a better situational passer, I think he'll be better. But here's the thing that we really need to discuss. We talk about Lamar Jackson or him needing to be a better passer, and like I said, I agree to a certain extent. But let's talk about the organization. The organization has went all in on Lamar. They've modeled the defense and offense around him, and rightfully so. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's a reigning MVP. Like, Lamar Jackson is that good. But here is where the organization needs to be called into question. I'm not going to say called into questioning. Here's what the organization needs to needs to look themselves in the mirror and make adjustments. Before you get Lamar Jackson, all these quarterback classes, and before that you really just, make him focus on becoming a better passer, how about you get him a number one receiver? Now, I understand that we thought Hollywood Brown, or no, not we thought, they brought Hollywood Brown in to be a number one receiver, but he hasn't been. He still has timely drops. He's not the. I understand that he's not the tallest wide receiver, and of course we're gonna say, but what about Tyreek Hill? What about Tyreek Hill? He's not as fast as Tyreek Hill, and he doesn't have the hands like Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is one of one, my G. So Hollywood Brown has not been the number one receiver that the Ravens thought he was going to be. Boykins is not a number one receiver. Dez Bryant at this point of his career is not a number one receiver. Willie Snead has never been a number one receiver. The first thing that the organization needs to do is get Lamar a number one receiver. And there's a lot of receivers that's going to be on the market. Look at Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to be a free agent. How about you bring him in? Look at Allen Robinson. How about you try to bring him in? Look at Kenny Galloway from the Lions. How about you try to bring him in? Why don't you look at some, see if you can strike a deal with one of the Bucs wide receivers, because I know some of their contracts are going to be up. The organization needs to set up the player. Let me say this. The organization needs to make it as easy as possible for a player's success. And while the Ravens have done an incredible job at that with Lamar Jackson, I think they need to do a better job at getting pieces around him. The running game is great. You still have Mark Ingram, who probably won't be there, so that cap is going to be off. But you still have J.K. Dobbins, you still have Gus Edwards, and you have Lamar Jackson. Now it's time to really focus on the wide receivers. It'd be different if, of course, Hollywood Brown is their number one receiver, but he's not a typical number one. Like, he's not good enough to be a number one in any other team except maybe the New England Patriots, but that's because their wide receiver core is so awful. So you go get pieces for Lamar, and then you work on Lamar Jackson being a situational passer. Look at Josh Allen. Look at the quarterback on the other side of the field. Josh Allen was god awful his first few years. Like, his inaccuracy was so bad that he was the main reason the Bills could not succeed. I don't know what they did, but you bring on Stephon Diggs, you get more pieces around him, and then you work on his accuracy. And now Josh Allen's playing for the AFC Championship. And at least in my opinion, the second he's probably runner up for MVP this year. Again, you get Lamar Jackson some help, you get Lamar Jackson some pieces, then you can really work on him being a situational passer, a better situational passer, because people that say he can't pass the ball, I don't believe that. I think that you need to get him pieces, get him wide receivers that can create better separation, and that can actually be a number one receiver. Like, we know what Allen Robinson can do. We know what Juju Smith-Schuster can do. We know what Kenny Galloway can do. You get him pieces and then work on the quarterback techniques, and then I think the Ravens would be good. And the Bills defense came. The reason why I thought that the Ravens would win this game was because the Bills' inability to stop the run. And you're going against the best running team we've seen in a decade. I didn't expect the Bills to be able to not only limit the run game, but limit Lamar Jackson and his running attempts, and kind of force him to be a passer. And it was that pick six that turned the game around. Yeah, I don't think that Lamar Jackson would have led them back to victory if he didn't get concussed, because the team just looked, at least the offense just looked discombobulated the entire game. But again, shout out to the Bills, man. Their game plan worked to perfection. And it was a smart game plan. You limit the run. I knew that everyone knows that's going to be the game plan when you go against the Ravens. Limit the run, turn Lamar Jackson into a passer. However, it just doesn't work a lot. A lot of times it doesn't work. And I didn't think that it was going to work against the Bills I didn't think the Bills were going to be able to capitalize on that because they have a horrible running defense, and they also can't run the ball offensively, but it is what it is. But shouts out to the Bills for beating the Ravens 17-3. The next game we'll talk about is the Packers beat the Rams 32-18. This is the second straight AFC Championship for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers was just incredible. Again, this team is looking like the best team and it doesn't really look close. And the thing that we're starting to, and I'm not really, it is what it is. We're starting to see. I'm not one to blame a coach all the time for lack of success or for a team not being able to win, but we're starting to see, at least it's starting to really look apparent that it was Mike McCarthy holding back Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers from success outside of that one Super Bowl, because Aaron Rodgers has looked his best since separating from Mike McCarthy. And last year, I understand that, and I remember predicting this. I said this in the prediction. I said that Green Bay is going to mirror last year, this year. And the relationship with Matt LaFleur is going to be better. And as we're seeing, Aaron Rodgers on a great, he has a great rapport with Matt LaFleur right now, and they look unstoppable, bro. And here's the thing: they were going against the best, at least in the remaining of the playoffs. They were going against the best defense in the playoffs in the Rams, and they were making it look like the Rams are playing on rookie and they were playing on Hall of Fame. Like, that's how good Aaron Rodgers was. He was getting Lazard. It would have been worse. The score would have been worse if it wasn't for Lazard dropping a wide open touchdown. Like, Lazard was good. Valdez-Scantling didn't really even he really wasn't even in the game. But Adams was good, and of course Aaron Jones was great. The Packers look unstoppable, and it's hard for me, seeing what I saw from the Packers, to think that they, we'll talk about it in a little bit. And we'll talk about the Rams. The Rams have a lot of situations on their hands. They have one of the highest payrolls on the league, and a lot of the players that they're paying aren't producing. And let me not sugarcoat it. It's not really a lot. You have to make a decision on, is Jared Goff going to be the quarterback of the future or not? I know if a report came out yesterday saying that Jared Goff and Sean McVay are not on the same page. What are you going to do with Jared Goff? And if you do decide to move on from Jared Goff, who's going to pick up Jared Goff? The Rams, we know they went all in a couple years ago with, Todd Gurley and Aaron Donald and Fowler, and of course you had Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and that's when Jared Goff was at his best, I guess. And of course they got all the way to the Super Bowl, but Jared Goff does not look like a top quarterback right now, and this team is not built to win in the long term. This team is built to win now, especially when you look at the defense. You have Jalen Ramsey, and still Aaron Donald is still one of the best. He was just hampered with an injury, a rib injury. So they need to make some decisions. Is Jared Goff going to be the man moving forward, or do they need to invest in or look other places? So, the Packers look like the Packers, and the Rams, unfortunately, look like the Rams. Like, the Rams is such a Jekyll and Hyde team. They can look incredible, like they did against the Seahawks like a game before like they looked against the Seahawks when they just destroyed the Seahawks. Or they can look like they looked against the Jets. You know what I mean? So it's like you really don't know what you're going to get from the Rams, and that is a problem when that team costs as much as it costs as far as terms of payroll. And the people, it's kind of like the Cowboys, the people that are getting paid the most, or at least some people that are getting paid the most, are not producing in big moments. And that's something that needs to be rectified. So moving forward, let's talk about the divisional game. Let's first talk about the AFC Championship, which is the Bills against the Chiefs. I think this really hangs on if Patrick Mahomes plays. I think if Patrick Mahomes plays, it's really hard for me to see the Bills stopping the. You see, here's the thing. The Bills were able to stop the Ravens because they knew they didn't really have a wide receiver that could create separation like that. Even though you have Mark Andrews, who's still a tight end, and he's really good, they didn't have a receiver that can really put fear in your heart. And they knew if they limited Lamar Jackson to throwing the ball more than running, that they have a great shot. And even with that game plan and Lamar Jackson going out, you only win by 14 points. And the Ravens defense still limits you to 10 points. I understand it was wind and this, that, and the third, but I get it. But the Bills were also at home, and that is definitely a factor. That a game plan cannot be made for Patrick Mahomes. Yes, Patrick Mahomes does not run like Lamar Jackson, but Patrick Mahomes throws 10 times better than Lamar Jackson, and you have more weapons. You have Travis Kelce, like I said, you have Tyreek Hill, you have McCall Harmon. Like, those pieces alone, not to mention Sammy Watkins, and you still have LaShawn McCoy. They should get Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. This game, to me, depends on if Patrick Mahomes is healthy. If Patrick Mahomes plays, I have to choose. I have to go with the Chiefs because I saw what the Chiefs did with the Browns, and I saw what Patrick Mahomes was doing against the Browns, and it's I can't really unsee that. So to me, it really depends. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that and this is another reason why I think the Bills will have a tough time winning, is because they have no run game at all. Devin Singletary is not doing it. And it would be different if they were going against, like I said, the Ravens that can stop the run. The Chiefs can't stop the run. Like, the Chiefs have a really tough time stopping the run, just like the Bills. However, you don't need to worry about that because Devin Singletary and the Bills' running game does not put fear in your heart at all. So because of that, you're really gonna have to depend on Josh Allen throwing the ball, which he has won and is capable of winning while throwing the ball. But you going against Honey Badger and that secondary is gonna be tough. So, and not to mention, you have to worry about that high octave offense that the Chiefs have. I just think it's going to be too much for the Bills. So I have the Chiefs winning that. And on the NFC, you have the Packers against the Bucks. It's hard for me to see what I'm seeing from the Packers and thinking they're going to lose to the Bucks. Yes, I understand the Bucks had a really good game against the Saints and against Washington, but you're going against, if you really look at both games, when you're going against Washington, you're going against a backup quarterback in Tyler Heineke, and that offense, Washington's offense isn't really a hell. They're 7-9 for a reason. When you look at the game against the Saints, it was Drew Brees' 3 interceptions and Jared Cook's fumble, which four total turnovers. And all of those turnovers were pretty much set up the Bucks beautifully to score. I don't see 3 turnovers coming from the Packers. Now, I understand that you played the Packers in the regular season and beat them pretty handedly, but it's one, you're at home. 2, if it wasn't for 2 turnovers from Aaron Rodgers, which we almost never see in his entire career, I don't see that happening. Not to mention, you're bringing a warm weather team in the Bucks and you're bringing them to Lambeau, where I think it's supposed to be like 20 degrees and a high chance of snow. Now, I understand like players like Chris Godwin, who played at Penn State, or Tom Brady, who of course played New England, and Gronk, that really shouldn't matter since they're used to cold games. But Mike Evans, who went to Texas A&M, or Leonard Fournette, who went to LSU, or White on the defense, who went to LSU, Ndamukong Suh, well, he played in Detroit, but that's still a dome team. It's like they're not, I'm not saying that you're bringing a warm weather team to Lambeau, and of course we've heard this time and time again. Aaron Rodgers says, I want a home game. I want it to be decided at home. So I think the championship is going to be the Chiefs against the Ravens. I mean, the Chiefs against the Packers. I think those two teams are playing the best right now, and I like their matchups. You know what I mean? Like, and I like their matchups. So I have the Chiefs beating the Bills and the Packers beating the Bucks. So moving forward, we see a lot of head coach. This is the head coach vacancy time. Of course, that's definitely in the offseason, but this is a time when a lot of teams that aren't in the playoffs and have coach positions that need to be filled, they are being filled. You see Urban Meyers, he takes the Jags job. Urban Meyers, who left college and left Ohio State due to health reasons, it took a while for him to want to come back. And I think, the organization where they are with cap money, because I think the Jags will have, if not the most, one of the most cap limit or cap height, because they're not paying anybody, so they're gonna have a lot of money to work with in the off season. And of course, Trevor Lawrence more than likely come in. That's definitely a beautiful piece, or a appetizing piece, you can say, for someone to come in. And the NFL is different from college. Now, a lot of people are saying that it's more difficult in college, but I'll say that the only pushback I'll say is college is a year-round thing. You have recruiting, you have training camps. You have to worry about if this kid is doing good in school. You have to worry about their academics. Like, there's a lot of things you have to worry about in college that you don't have to worry about in the NFL. However, on the flip side, it's different talking to a 19-year-old kid who ain't getting paid nothing, and then talking to a grown man who's getting paid $20-30 million. Like, it's different. So this is what Urban Meyer wanted. I think that the Jags is a great place for him. Of course, you're getting Trevor Lawrence, and everywhere Urban Meyers is gone, whether it's Utah or Florida or Ohio State, he's succeeded. Now, again, I understand that's college, but he's succeeded everywhere he's gone. And the Jags is a young team. Again, I understand that you have a lot of cap space and a lot of money to operate with, and we'll see players he brings in. We'll see I think it's very important. This is very important for him to hire the right staff, especially seeing as though he's used to college and now you're going to NFL. I think you need some strong personalities that that are willing to be assistants and on the staff. I think that's very important for him. But Urban Meyer gets the Jags job, which is good. Robert Saleh gets the Jets job. I think that's good for the Jets. I don't know how good that is for Sam Darnold, seeing as though I thought that you need a quarterback coach that could really connect with him. Now, I understand that Robert Saleh is one of the best coaches in the league to connect with players. However, he was a defensive coordinator. So, and of course, the Jets have always been, their calling card has always been defense. And I think we need to see what they're going to do with Sam Darnold. But, I think it was a good hire for the Jets, all in all. Robert Saleh was still one of the best quarterback candidates out there, and I think they got who they wanted. The Falcons hired Titans offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. I think that is a great hire as well. The Falcons, we all know, is an offensive team, and when you have Matt Ryan, you have Julio Jones, you have Calvin Ridley. You want to capitalize as much. Dan Quinn was a defensive coach, and we know how bad Atlanta's defense has been. I think whoever Arthur Smith hires as a defensive coordinator is very important as well. But I think they're hoping that Arthur Smith can either connect with Matt Ryan or whoever the next quarterback they're going to bring in. They hope he can connect with him, and I think that's a good hire. The Chargers hired defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. I think Anthony Lynn is a great coach, but I think it was time for him to go. I think that, situationally, he needed some improvement as a head coach, and I think that Brandon Staley will be pretty good, especially, as the Chargers is a very talented team. Like, let's not get that confused. The Chargers is very talented, and I think that they hope and expect Brandon Staley to unlock at least that defense. And the defense is good. Don't get me wrong. The defense is good. You still have Derwin James. You still have Joey Bosa. But, I think it's time. The offense doesn't need a lot of help. Seeing as though Justin Herbert looks really good. Keenan Allen is good. You have Eckert. The offense doesn't need a lot of help. It's just the defense. I think Brandon Staley is someone that also can connect with quarterbacks and connect with their players really good, kind of like Robert Saleh. Even though he is a defensive coordinator, or he was a defensive coordinator, I think he's really good at connecting with players, and I think that's kind of what they want. They want someone that can connect with the young players because the Chargers is a very young team. So, and then of course there's other coaching vacancies. We need to see what's going to happen with Eric Bieniemy. We need to see what's going to happen with the Texans, who we'll talk about in a second. But a report came out saying that right now they're the least desirable team. Seeing, of course, what we're seeing with Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of coaches still out there. There's a lot of vacancies, and again, you can't hire or you can't really interview or you don't want to hire a coach, especially if they're still playing. Hence Eric Bieniemy. So I think, this offseason is going to be very, very interesting to see, of course, where who gets what job and who goes where as far as NFL talent. So moving forward. So I want to do something fun. So Deshaun Watson, reports have come out pretty much saying he's thrown his last ball in Houston. He's not responding to calls. It's not looking promising for Houston. It's pretty much, the writing's kind of on the wall right now saying Deshaun Watson's pretty much out from Houston. And I want to do the 5 best destinations for Deshaun Watson. Now, I understand, right now, the Dolphins and the Jets probably can give him the most. I get that. But that's not what I want to do. I want to do the 5 best destinations for him. I don't care about cap space. I don't care about this and the third, because I understand some of these teams can't afford him. I don't care. I don't care. I wanted to have fun, and I'm going to give the 5 best destinations for Deshaun Watson. Let's start with number 5, New Orleans. Now, Drew Brees is going to be out. Like I said, I think we've seen the last of Drew Brees, and I don't care what you say. Deshaun Watson is better than Taysom Hill, and I don't think that Jameis Winston's going to be there, but even if he is, Deshaun Watson's still better. And Deshaun Watson, you put Deshaun Watson on a team with that offensive line, plus you have Alvin Kamara, you have Michael Thomas, you have Emmanuel Sanders. That team to me should be in the running, or will be in the running for a Super Bowl for years to come if they're able to make something happen. I don't know how, but I also put at number 5, seeing as though I think it's very unlikely to happen, but that would, Deshaun Watson, you'll have the pieces that you wanted, you'll have the organization, and then you'll have the coach. Sean Payton is one of the best offensive coaches the league has ever had. Hell, we've seen how he unlocked Drew Brees. So, number 5, I have New Orleans. Number 4, I have Atlanta. You have Arthur Smith, who's a new head coach, and I think the time is up for Matt Ryan. So, Matt Ryan more than likely is going to be out there. You have Deshaun Watson with Julio Jones, who, when healthy, is arguably, if not the best, wide receiver in the game with Calvin Ridley, who's probably the best number 2 wide receiver in the game. And then look. Now, again, I understand the defense will still need to be worked on, but your offense will be set. You have that's the problem. That was the thing with Houston. Houston has no pieces they thought that having a running back in David Johnson, who had a pretty decent year, even though he was injured, they thought that, and then Kenny Stills, who didn't end with the team, Will Fuller, who ended suspended. It just didn't work out. So I think the piece that Atlanta have with Deshaun Watson as their quarterback would be crazy. Number 3, I have Chicago. Now, I think this could happen. Now, we've already seen Chicago and Mitch Trubisky looks like they're destined to be a part. The team, Matt Nagy's going to come back, and as we've seen, the team, you can only go so far with Mitchell Trubisky, especially when you have some of the weapons. Like, I know he's a free agent, but you have Robinson right now, you have Miller, you have David Montgomery, you have what's his name? Jimmy Graham. I think that it's just as you can clearly see, I'm choosing places that have pieces, offensive pieces that can help Deshaun. And I think that Chicago. Now I understand Deshaun from the South. He went to Clemson. He played in Houston. He's used to hot, so the code will definitely be different for him. But you have weapons galore, and if Chicago, we've always said Chicago is just a piece away, and I think Deshaun Watson will be that piece. Number 2, I have Pittsburgh. Now, this could happen because the reason why a lot of people, including myself, are saying that Big Ben will not be there next year is because he's going to take a $41 million cap hit on the team. It'd be different if he was worth that $41 million by his play. If his play was warranted $41 million, to be like, all right, well, it's Big Ben, it's 41. We still have some really good young pieces. We'll do what we got to do. But no, Big Ben is not playing like he's worth $41 million, and I think I understand Deshaun Watson is worth more than that. I understand some people are gonna have to go, but Big Ben's gonna be gone. Juju Smith-Schuster more likely is going to hit free agent. He's going to be gone. And even with that, you still have Johnson. You still have Washington. You still have Claypool. And then they need to they need to find a way to focus on that running game. But you have pieces galore in Pittsburgh. And, of course, we know the defense. You get Bug Dupree back from injury. You still have T.J. Watt. That team, to me, would be incredible with Deshaun Watson. Like, incredible. Before I go to number 1, I have a couple honorable mentions. I have the Colts. The Colts would be really good. I've been standing on the table saying that Phillip Rivers is not it. And, I think with the pieces they have, especially with that defense too, and Deshaun Watson would be really good. Of course, we have the Dolphins. Their defense is great. You have a great tight end. You have really good running back. And, of course, the Jets. The two teams that are kind of likely to fight for him. You have that defense. Now, the Jets would need to figure out how to get some wide receiver help. But, you have some talents or promising pieces. But for my number 1, I have San Fran. And that's really because of Kyle Shanahan. We see what Kyle Shanahan has done for Jimmy Garoppolo. We see what Kyle Shanahan has done for Kirk Cousins when he was in Washington. We see how great Kyle Shanahan is at getting the most out of your quarterback. And I couldn't imagine just how good, especially with Deebo Samuels and what's his name? Aruka or something. I forgot to say his name. But I couldn't only imagine what Deshaun Watson would be with a quarterback. With a coach like Kyle Shanahan. So I have number 5 New Orleans, number 4 Atlanta, number 3 Chicago, number 2 Pittsburgh, and number 1 San Francisco. So I think that is probably going to dominate until he gets traded. I think that's going to dominate the offseason where Deshaun Watson goes. I think I think Deshaun Watson is a huge domino piece, and he's probably the first domino piece for a lot of teams. I think almost every team, there's probably maybe 4 or 5 teams that don't need to call, but every team that that their quarterback is not the future, needs to call for Deshaun Watson. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. So let's move forward. So the NHL season started last week, and you see a lot of changes. You're seeing a lot of changes, and it wasn't talked about here, and a lot of people haven't talked about it except for NHL channels. But NHL is probably the sport that's going to be affected most by COVID, and I say that because if you've ever been to an NHL or hockey game, it's unlike anything else. The NHL really hangs their hat on having the best live experience. It's just different. It's different from any football game, basketball game. We all know I'm a basketball head. However, it's just different going to a live hockey game. And hockey gets most of their revenue from live games, which it is the fans. Because if you even look, most, if not all of, let's just talk about the Caps, because all I know is the Capitals. Pretty much, if there was 82 games, 81 would be sold out. Like that's how much people love going to, and I would assume that it's like that for most other cities. And COVID is really hitting the NHL hard. They had a successful end of the season last year with the bubble, but they're not doing a bubble this year. And there's a lot of things that needed to change because you're not, they've already said that they're not having any fans. So that's majority of their money that they're not making. So how they're adapting is they're going from 82 games to 56. You're having logos on the helmets and on the ice and the rinks. Again, they need to find a way they're trying to find a way how to capitalize on this season and moving forward, because they're I think the projection is they're going to lose up to $1 billion just this season, seeing as though they're not having fans in any arena, and that's where most of their money coming from. And they had to do division realignment instead of having like the NHL. Well, let me say this: they have some, because they need to make money, and because they're having a shortened season. They did not only did they change the names for the divisions, but they had to do some division realigning. So now you have the Mass Mutual East, which was, I think, the Metropolitan or NHL Metropolitan or whatever. You have Washington, Philly, New Jersey, Boston, the Rangers, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo. That's for the Mass Mutual East. You have the Division Central, Tampa Bay, Nashville, Florida, Carolina, Detroit, Columbus, Dallas, and Chicago. That's for Discover Central. You have the Honda West, which is Vegas, Minnesota, Arizona, Colorado, St. Louis, San Jose, the Los Angeles, and whatever. That's the Honda West. You have the Scotia North, which is pretty much all the Canada teams. You have Toronto, Montreal, Calgary. You have Winnipeg, Ottawa, Edmonton, and Vancouver. So I think it's very interesting to see how the NHL was going to fare this season. Of course, I think they're going to have a successful season, but this is going to do a lot more moving forward, because you're going to lose money regardless, and they're going to have to make it up some way. So just, watch, because right now I think the only place I can see hockey is NBC, NBC Sports mostly, but they're pretty much going against news and stuff like that. So look to see if they try to spark a deal with ESPN. Of course, I think once the fans will start being able to come in, I think the tickets will probably the ticket sales are going to be, or the ticket prices, I should say, are going to be higher than usual, seeing as though they have to try to recoup the money that they're losing. And I know players' salaries are probably going to get cut. I know the NHL and hockey players don't make a lot of money, but I understand. Like I said, they're going to be playing catch up at this point, and I think that they're players probably understand that, at least not this year, but in the coming years, salaries are going to change drastically, seeing as how they can adapt to the $1 billion they've lost this season. So, like I said, the NHL, I'm excited to see how they adapt to, one, not having a bubble, and two, seeing, with all the hell, most of their in fact, all of their divisions are sponsored and titled after banks. So they're looking to see how can we make as much money as possible, seeing as though we're losing a lot of money. So there's that. And lastly, before we go, the WNBA free agency started last week as well, and this free agency this year at least is huge, seeing as though there's some huge names. There's Candace Parker, there's Sue Bird, who just won a championship, and there's Diana Taurasi among other free agents. And these names can be game altering. Like, imagine if Diana Taurasi went to like the Connecticut Sun, or went to Washington. Went to Washington. Imagine if Sue Bird left the Storm, how big that would be. Or Candace Parker, who's been a staple for the LA Sparks. Imagine if she leaves. We saw a couple moves like last year. We saw players that were moved and made direct impacts on their team, and like Skylar Diggins going to Phoenix. I think that I know that there has been like the way that the Sparks ended, especially with Candace Parker, how I think she got like benched the second half of last year, or second half of the last game of last year. I think that, I don't know if she's going to stay or not, or I don't know if they want her back, even though she's still a top player. We know how important Sue Bird is to the Storm, and of course we know how important how important Diana Taurasi is, not only to the Phoenix Mercury, but to WNBA in general. Hell, we know how important all three of those players are. So I think that this is a very important WNBA free agency, and to see where they go if they do leave will be huge, and will cause huge ripple effects throughout the entire league. And it is interesting to see some players won't be back due to the fact that teams can't afford them anymore, seeing as though they are affected by COVID as well. So I think that it's definitely interesting to see how leagues like the NBA, WNBA, NHL, NFL are adapting to COVID and how they're going to move forward. So, and there you have it. I appreciate you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys for watching. Please subscribe to wherever you're listening. If come to the YouTube channel and please subscribe. I think the visuals are quite incredible, if you ask me. But again, I love you guys and have a great week. And until next time, much love.